thanks to Viv for inviting me along to do a talk for the Integrated Health Forum. Integrated health is something I'm really passionate about because I do believe that we really need to share what we're finding, whether we're involved in conventional health or in complementary medicine. And SHEN just holds such potential to be able to answer questions for both conventional health and also for complementary medicine. So I've been involved in complementary medicine for over 20 years. In fact, I'm the only person I know who got a massage table for her 21st birthday. So it's been a big part of my life for a long time. And I set up and ran a holistic therapy centre in Scotland 20 odd years ago. And I've really seen how complementary medicine has exploded. And there is so much on offer, offering us all sorts of things that it's becoming quite hard to see the wood for the trees. But I do believe that we find the thing that's right for us, and for me SHEN has been that, so it's really been my saving grace, and it's been many people's saving grace. I started out studying massage, and on my massage course it became apparent to me that emotions were very much a part of our physical makeup, that we couldn't really separate our physical body from our emotional body, if you like. Because the two were right there side by side. As soon as the body starts to relax, emotions can start to surface. But what frustrated me greatly was that the only kind of advice I could get when it came to body work was that you had to kind of scream it out or beat cushions or yell or whatever, and have a conversation with your mum or your dad about what you weren't happy about. And it seemed to just go on forever. There just seemed to be no end to emotional release work, and I don't really want to spend my whole life beating up cushions with anger. And when I came across SHEN, I'd really found something that addressed emotions and released emotions and really allowed me to move on from what I was struggling with. And we like that. Because I think as a therapist it's important to remember why it is that we're actually trying to help our clients, and that is to help them enjoy their life. And in therapy circles, we somehow forget that is actually the point of this. And we can get so stuck in the issues and all the layers of problems and all the emotions that we lose track of where we're actually heading. So I kind of like streamline fast stuff. I'm a bit impatient that way. And so I find SHEN work very effectively and quickly. It's not immediate. SHEN is not an immediate releasing experience, but it's a journey that really allows you to become more authentic and allows you to live your life so that you are not being driven by your emotions. So you don't become emotionless, but you stop being driven by your past, by your baggage. And that's really SHEN's magic. So I thought I'd just share a couple of stories. Well, what happened was recently I was in Australia with the family. We hired a camper van, and we were stuck in the middle of nowhere because our camper van broke down and it was pouring with rain. And we had the laptop and not a lot else, so I said, well, I might as well just start planning my SHEN talk. Whereupon my 9-year-old said, oh, you could do it in PowerPoint. So here's my little 9-year-old showing me how to use PowerPoint, which was a whole new experience for me. So that's why you'll find she features quite highly in this presentation. That's Hazel there, looking absolutely angelic. But then it kind of worked out that was sort of perfect, because Hazel has a little bit of a SHEN story that I thought I would share with you, which is that when she was about 1, I noticed lots of characteristics that suggested there was something going on that SHEN could help. So she was bumping into everything, she was constipated, she was always on the go, she had no appetite, that's right, and if she did eat, she'd eat off our plates. She couldn't focus on her own food, she'd just help herself to what else was there. And the other thing was that whenever her dad went off to work, her world would just fall apart. And so I knew that these were all pointing to this area here from a SHEN point of view. And the other thing as well was she was always waking up through the night. She was waking about 3 times every night. So, you know, you get into that whole exhausted mother thing, and you know, everything you've learned kind of goes out the window. And then I sort of went, right, okay, I need to commit to giving this girl some SHEN. So every time she woke, I gave her SHEN. Now the first night she woke, so she woke at midnight, 3 and 6. So I wasn't getting a lot of sleep. The next day she woke twice instead of 3 times. And she also asked for her breakfast. So the minute she got up in the morning, she asked for breakfast, which she had never done. She wasn't interested in food at all. The next night after that she woke once. And I noticed that as I gave her SHEN, she became much less riddly. And then one night she had a really hot area here, and I held my hands there, and she whimpered a little bit, and her little legs just whipped up, and she sort of folded herself, because she was actually a breech baby. She was frank breech, which is when the feet are up the way, and so the bum's down, the head's up, but the legs go straight up as well. So her body actually folded into the position it had been in when she was inside me. And then a few moments later, it was about 10 seconds, and then her little feet just dropped back down again and she fell asleep. So the next day, she really started eating with relish. In fact, there was a trail of crumbs from the fridge leading to her bedroom, and she had a whole packet of croissants, and she had been, you know, taking a bite out of each one. So, you know, she'd really shifted to being interested in food. Much more focused, and sleeping through the night, only waking to have a pee. So she actually started to become aware of actually needing to pee. And the constipation was gone as well. So, you know, as we go on, you'll get to understand what it is that happened in that little experience. But what was so neat about that was her being a little child. You know, I could have said to her, now you need to focus, and I could have given her stuff for her constipation, and I could have got into a whole thing around, well, how are we going to get you to eat? And I could have ended up having her on Ritalin for being so hyperactive. But in actual fact, she just had this little experience, this little release, and it solved all these problems at once, which is really the power of what SHEN does, because we're working at such a pivotal level. So SHEN stands for, it's actually an acronym, and it stands for specific, and you work in specific areas on specific emotions, and you're working in a very specific way. So it's not a vague therapy in human, because we're not zebras, and we don't actually know exactly how it works with animals, but yeah, human and emotional is the E. Because we're working with the emotions, and releasing the emotions is having an effect elsewhere in the body, physically as well as mentally. And then the aim is nexus. So a nexus point is if you were having a game of pool or snooker, and your white ball hit a ball that sent 6 balls into the pocket all at once, you've hit a nexus point. So this is what SHEN does, like I explained about little Hazel and her experience. It pockets all the balls because it's hitting the spot that affects everything. What makes SHEN different from other therapies is that it was discovered by a scientist, somebody who had a background in aeronautics, chemistry, and electronics. So somebody who has a very analytical mind. 33 years of scientific research. There's been a lot of research into how this works, why this works, what we need to do, how best to work to get the results that we want. So, and you don't have to believe it for it to work for you. And thousands have said SHEN worked when nothing else did, which is why it's very satisfying to be a SHEN therapist, because sometimes you reach people who are at the end of the road and they've tried everything, whether it's been with some sort of physical condition or emotional condition or whatever. There's this framework of understanding, but that's what keeps it consistently effective. So yes, there's room for intuition, but the understanding with the intuition works really well, because you can always come back to first principles. You can, if I'm stuck, I can say, okay, what's going on in the body? This is how it works, and I can take that cognitive understanding and apply it to sessions. And it's non-talking, because understanding why you feel the way you do doesn't make pain go away. So a lot of therapies, counselling, psychotherapy, although it's very valuable in itself, there's a point where it's really time to let go, and that's where SHEN can really help. So, and it merges a theory of emotion with the science of the physics of the biofield. So we're actually looking at physics within the body. We're applying the laws of physics, and the understanding of the biofield's direction of movement, and therefore how to unknot it. So the way the biofield moves around the body is something that we know how to help it to move and flow more freely, so that people can release emotion that is trapped within the biofield. I will explain as we go. So what is the biofield? Natural occurring, low intensity electromagnetic field permeating everyone's body and moving in specific directions. Specific directions. So you can actually feel your biofield in your hands. So we give your hands a little bit of a shake. We'll have a little experience of just allow yourself to do like almost like a cycling kind of motion, like that. What do you experience, Jim?
Oh, just slight warmth.
Warmth? Sally? No.
It's almost like a very, very mild shock.
Okay. Yeah. What do you, Nick? So a sort of magnetic kind of tingly kind of heat. Something, there's something there. Okay, so that's your biofield. Great thing to do when you've been on the computer for hours on end. Just hold your right hand behind, left hand in front, and what happens is that flow that goes from one hand to the other is going right through to all those little muscles inside the eye, and sometimes you can feel them go. Same with sinuses. If you've got a sinus as well, you've got a blocked sinus, you can release your sinus doing the same thing. It's just very subtle, but it's working deep inside, because that flow is always going from one hand to the other. So when you put it through the body, it's going through the body, and it's just relaxing those muscles that it comes up against. Biofield is all about your emotions, although that was just a little taste of it. So we use the biofield, we use the flow of the biofield, so in the same way that you use the direction that the flow moves in your hands, we line that up with how it moves in the body. But I just want to talk to you about what we do to avoid our emotions. We're masters at avoiding our emotions. So anybody got any ideas? Anybody want to volunteer? What do we do to avoid our emotions?
Oh, eat.
Eat, okay. Block them at the throat in particular.
Anger is a goodie.
Anger, yes. Very good.
Overrun.
Do you want to click that button? We'll have a look at some of the list. You hold your breath, or you breathe very shallowly. Some people breathe to here, because this is where the emotions are, so we don't want to breathe in there. Close off from people. People have hurt me, I'm going to not be around them, that'll solve the problem. Drink alcohol, take drugs, this is too painful, I want this to go away, so I'll just take something. Smoke, same thing, I want this to go away. And often smokers, the first emotion that comes up when they start giving up, what is it? Does anybody know? When you hear of somebody giving up smoking, first emotion?
Guilt and anger.
Guilt and anger, yeah. Anger usually is it. Was that?
Irritability as well.
What? Irritable, angry, and there was another one that popped into my head there that's just gone. Fear I'm going to put weight on, comes up as well. Overeat, somebody said that. Yeah, overeat, try and swallow down, it's more of that swallowing, trying to fill that hole. Restlessness, very jittery. That's a sign that you're trying to avoid your emotions. Avoiding eye contact. We've all been with people who've done that, which none of us have. Talking non-stop, that's another one. Yelling and screaming. Now some people would say this is emotional release work. But in actual fact, where's the release in yelling and screaming? In actual fact, that's a lot of tension in the body when you shout and yell and brr. Next. Being angry all the time, rather than experiencing the deeper hurt it covers up. So anger is a great cover up. So when you're experiencing anger, you're not wanting to feel the powerlessness that's behind it. So it's much easier to feel angry than it is to feel powerless. Because in anger you feel a little bit like you've got some kind of power over someone, but power over someone is not power. So yeah, and in actual fact, when you get to the hurt behind the anger, that's okay. When you get to the hurt behind the anger, then you don't need the anger anymore because it was always a cover up anyway for that deeper hurt. So emotions are not in the mind. See, we were at Wanaka at the, anybody been to Puzzle World? Butterflies in the stomach. What would that emotion be when you've got butterflies in the stomach?
Anxiety.
Anxiety. Here. So, just bring her around now. So, anxiety is happening in here. Butterflies in the stomach. So the stomach is in here. Venting the spleen. What does that mean? No, have you not heard it? Is it a British thing to vent the spleen? So you've heard it?
Anger.
Anger.
Shitty liver is the other one.
Exactly, liberation.
Shitty liver.
Yeah. It's all in here. This is where all our anger is. Yeah, exactly. There we go. Have you got this expression in New Zealand? Pissed off?
Yeah.
Pissed off? Where do they pee? In the kidneys. Here they are. They're in here. This area again.
This is that anger?
Anger, yeah. And it's also fear as well. Fear and anger. Gutted and gutless, when people are gutted. Disappointed down here, yeah. This is where all our feelings to do with ourselves are. This is where me is. Next. Knees knocking. Like in a cartoon, you see the knees knocking? Nervous? Scared? Scared, fear, yeah. The root down here, which comes right down into the knee area as well, is terror. And I've not actually worked with anybody from Christchurch yet. I dare say that's on the horizon. But the root will be very affected because they've had mortal terror, where their lives have been in danger. But also the root is, people sometimes become rootless and they travel a lot. So the home is connected with the root as well. And so you have the terror, you have the rootlessness, and you have anything to do with where you come from. So for example, people who are adopted, the root is affected with them, for example.
So you're saying that it resides in the knees? I'm not sure.
No, it's in this area here, but it also extends right down towards here. So that terror, we talk about knees knocking, it shows itself here. So
it originates what, in the groin or in
yes.
these sexual organs? You're pointing here.
Yes,
so
yes.
What are you talking about?
Down here, down below, sort of in that bit, in that part there, just below the sexual organs and down into this area as well. The point I'm making really here is that our emotions aren't in our mind, they're really in our, well, I'll tell you where. Heartbroken. Oh, yeah. Be heartbroken. And somebody said that before, just swallow it down, bottle it up. It's here, isn't it? The sort of medical opinion is that they're in our mind. The SHEN opinion is that they're in our body, in our torso, and they're affecting our thoughts. So it's sort of the other way around. Let's say that's like the person's body. So let's say little Timmy, and we'll put some singing next door. Little Timmy, when he's 7 years old, he's in a school play and he falls off the stage, right? And he... Was that?
How embarrassing.
How embarrassing.
Yeah.
So a little seed of embarrassment, if you like, so that is planted in that moment. So the body has contracted around that embarrassment. Coming from that moment of embarrassment, what will happen is, so I'm calling this a seed and this is the ground, is, we'll use thistles because I'm from Scotland and they're all nice and jaggy. But let's say coming from that is I'm an idiot. So that thought is coming from that embarrassment. It's not the other way around. It's not that we think I'm an idiot and then we get the emotion of being an idiot. It's actually that way around. And this is really key because this is why SHEN gets to the nexus of things. So I'm an idiot. Let's say he hurt his knee. Okay, so he's got some knee pain in there too. That's kind of going to be in here with his embarrassment. Let's say he's got some knee pain. That's what's presenting itself in his outside life. Let's say that because of that experience, he has a fear of lots of people. Sorry? Fear of school plays. Fear of lots of people, okay? Because he associates that moment with there being lots of people laughing at him, okay? So there's another thistle for us. So what else could we have from a moment like that? So we've got I'm an idiot, got a knee pain, fear of lots of people. So he might become very shy. So he becomes very withdrawn and shy. Okay?
It's just how it is.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah, that's just how I am. And in fact, see, but this time he's growing up and he's forgotten all about this. This is in the body. He's forgotten all about this, but all these different sort of symptoms are revealing themselves. And what could this one be? He might just avoid people. So he could, through having fear of lots of people, just be quite alone, couldn't he? He could just become quite alone, and then he might become depressed. So you can have all of this happening from one event that happened maybe years and years and years ago. So you've got these presenting sort of symptoms, and you go and you see the chiropractor, and he does a great job and helps your knee, but you find the pain comes back again. And then you take things for your knee and you do your physio exercises, but it doesn't get better. You feel like you're an idiot. You don't actually know why, but you can certainly give people lots of reasons why you're an idiot. Now here's the thing, let's say somebody comes along and says, no, you're not an idiot, what you need to do is positively think, you need to think positive. So somebody comes along and says, here's the solution, you have to think like a sunflower, you know? You have to think I am wonderful. So here we go, we're going to do positive thinking. You see, we're trying to add this sort of flower on top of this thistle. And so what happens is it doesn't quite kind of work. It's sort of like there's this persistence, but I'm an idiot that's in there, you see. So this is why people go so far with positive thinking, and then they can start thinking that they're a bit of a failure because they didn't do very well at positive thinking. You know? And so then, you know, they can go to their doctor and they can get some depression medication.
Prozac.
Was that?
Prozac.
Prozac, exactly, yeah. So then they come along and they have SHEN, and what they do is the SHEN takes them to this moment of embarrassment. It doesn't take them to the moment, it takes them to the embarrassment that's locked away in their body. And you see, emotions have a life cycle. So when you experience an emotion, it's got a birth, and it's got a life, and it needs to have its death to complete. So there's a cycle that has to go through. Now what usually happens is you have your birth, and then you don't like the feeling of it very much. You do whatever you can to avoid it. So you can learn many techniques to try and stop yourself from feeling this. But what we do in SHEN is we actually encourage that cycle to complete. We're actually allowing that to do what it's trying to do. And that is what makes that go. And when that goes, this is absolutely irrelevant. This becomes just not there. The knee pain goes, depression's not there, the feelings of I'm an idiot, the fear of being around people, being withdrawn, being alone, that has just gone, you see? Because we went to the root of where the problem was.
Laura, can I just ask you something? Do you have to then take people back to find what the root was? Or does SHEN work without actually identifying the root, or just the?
You don't have to identify the root, and the neat thing is you can experience embarrassment during a session. You might not even know what the circumstances were under which you were experiencing the embarrassment. The point is you're trying to avoid that feeling. You'll set yourself up to try and avoid how you feel. But the SHEN, really, I don't get to say, today we're going to work on this moment in your life when this happened. So the person might say something to me about what's up for them, like I'm remembering when I was little this happened to me. That would give me an idea of where in the body is ready to release. But it can be something completely different. So it's the body that kind of decides what's ripe and ready. And my job as a therapist is to recognise what door is open that I can go through. What's presenting itself that I can help that person to complete that cycle of emotion. So, yeah.
So if you think, of a specific time in your life when you went, and locked it away.
Yeah.
Does that fast track the healing? I know you just said it could be something else, but you're still remembering the moment.
Yeah. It's what's alive for you when you come for your session. What's alive for you in that moment? What emotion is alive for you? So when I do a consultation with someone, I'm asking them about their life. I'm really listening for what is the dominant emotions that they're experiencing? What is it they're struggling with that is sort of ready to go through this completion cycle? So like with Hazel, when I gave you all those different symptoms and I said that she was always on the go, so that was like her avoiding the emotion, when we talked about the different ways of avoiding emotion, just always being on the go, and she had no appetite. And she was bumping into everything, and her world fell apart when Dad went to work. Well, abandonment issues are all down in this area as well. And when somebody's not focused, when they're all over the place, that's down in this area as well. So it points, and also constipation down in this area. So because of all these different seemingly irrelevant symptoms, it pointed to that area. So I knew that was where I needed to work, and that's where she had her release. And that's when her appetite improved and all the changes happened in her as well. Sometimes we think we know what and we can be surprised by what the body's got in store. So we can go in thinking, this is what the problem is and this is what I'm working on. But there's a release that can happen it's connected with that, but it's actually something else. So we need our mind from a point of view of working out where we need to work, but actually the body is the one that's the guide. It's the body that guides us as to where to. It's a bit like, a burglar trying to get into a house. If the window's open, we'll go through the window rather than keep knocking on the door. So we want to go in where something's presenting. So when somebody's talking, they might be talking about a particular emotion or particular symptoms. And that will allow me to know where in the body to work. But yeah, we can be surprised by what pops up sometimes. So yeah, and really the gauge is how the person is in their life. That's really the gauge, rather than what happens on the table. Because some people, it's just a very relaxing experience, and they just go, oh, I feel so relaxed, that was lovely. And some people get colours. I'll tell you all the things that can happen in SHEN, because that's in here as well. So here we go. They affect how you think, and how you feel, and how you behave. So, we've got things like behavioural therapy, we've got positive thinking, but it's the trapped emotion inside that's causing the behaviour, that's causing the thinking and causing the feeling. So that's why we need to go to the emotion. And then this automatic causes you to overreact and say or do things you later regret. Cause sleeplessness. It stops you moving forward in your life. So it creates tension in the body. Changes your breathing patterns and cuts off the blood supply. So the blood is carrying food and oxygen and water, and the emotion is trapped, and so it's closing off at the capillary level. So it's kind of like I always think of roads when I think of arteries and veins and things. So if like the artery there's your artery, which is like the motorway, and then you've got your veins, which are like the side roads coming into the motorway. Well, right back here is the capillaries, and the capillaries are kind of like your house with the car trying to get into the driveway and go off down the road. So it's cutting off at the capillary level. So there's all these little capillaries feeding in, and this is where the cut-off, we believe, is happening. So gradually, as all these little capillaries are closing up, the blood is not able to flow as freely to the major organs. So you've got like a city here that's called kidney, and the blood isn't able to fully get through because it's cut off at this point. So the emotion is trapped in here, and it can't get through. So that inhibits the function of the major organs, thereby causing gradual eventual breakdown in the affected area. So because the blood can't get through, the food and the oxygen and the water can't get through, so you start to see different areas. So this is the real link between your physical health and your emotional health.
Causes disease, I suppose.
And causes disease, yeah, exactly. So how does SHEN work? So it's understood that your body contracts around physical pain. This is the autocontractile pain response. So this is known in medical circles. So basically, if you break your arm, you'll know this, Sally, then your body will contract around about it. But it's overlooked that your body also contracts around emotional pain. So when you hear bad news, you'll go, you know, it's not here. You don't feel it here. You feel it in your body. If you're terrified, you know, just like we're talking about the anxiety and shaking, it's in your body. So it's like a reflex action, you've got no control of it. So something happens to you, it's painful, it's emotionally painful, and there's nothing you can do about it because the body will contract around that pain. But SHEN releases this ACPR. That's what SHEN does. So that's why it works, because it's that emotion that became trapped can now be released. And it releases through the experiencing of it, through allowing it to have its full cycle. And then you draw out the emotion that's been trapped.
Can I say something? I went
Yeah,
to a
of
funeral
course.
the other day of a guy who was 86, and it was revealed that when he was a young guy, he lost his, I think it was his mother, his brother and his sister in very close proximity to each other. And soon after that he got asthma. And then asthma progressed into emphysema.
Gosh.
So, you know, it's just, yeah.
Yeah, absolutely, you're making a connection because that's where grief is. Yeah, and this will be interesting for you Liv, with your work. So does it answer some questions for what you do? Because Viv does the Buteyko method, which helps with asthma. So what is it you train people to breathe differently?
Well, I would turn them to their normal breathing pattern.
Yeah.
So what I'm doing is working with them to counter hyperventilation.
Right, yeah. So when you're helping their breathing pattern return to normal, does emotion come up?
Very much.
Right.
9 times out of 10.
9 times out of 10. Wow.
Yeah, which is the reason when I contacted you, I think that it would be a good partnership.
Work well, yeah. So do you see why that's happening from what we've said here? I can share a little story as well from my point of view with SHEN, and it's related to Hazel again, because Hazel had to be born by C-section, which for me was a huge disappointment because I wanted a home water birth and got a C-section instead. And I've had several experiences where that's come up in SHEN sessions, and so one of them was, I went in during a SHEN session, I just went into spontaneous contractions, and it wasn't painful at all, but my body it was just like waves going through, and afterwards it felt like something had completed. So it was almost like my body didn't get to give birth, and so it did it on the SHEN table instead, so that incomplete feeling got its chance to complete. I've also had deep sadness coming up, and I've had memories of being on the operating table. Now my memory of being on the operating table was, it was just noisy, it was terrifying, just an alien environment, and I was disappointed to be in this situation, but delighted to have a child as well. So it was kind of a very confused emotion, but actually what came up was a deep, deep sadness and disappointment, and the feeling of like I'd failed, I hadn't been able to give birth, and so all this feeling of kind of failing had come up as well. And I also felt the epidural needle getting pulled out, and what happened was there was this huge sensation down in my legs, like as if the anaesthetic had reversed itself, and there was just all this kind of rush of sensation in my legs, and it felt as if for years I had been kind of holding that. And it's particularly down this leg, which I actually several years later had a really nasty sciatica pain with it, and it felt like something had just come back. So we don't know exactly when we take these anaesthetics and things the full extent of what effect it's having on our body, but it felt like something had reversed itself as well.
Well, I had some life coaching with Laura, and as a result of that, I hadn't really realised that I was completely unable to say no to anything. I'd spent my whole
Okay,
life.
so who can say no here? Nobody can say no.
Because I've got 3 boys, little boys.
I had 2 daughters, and I still couldn't say no. And actually, it was a huge disability. And when we sort of followed it back, it went way back through my childhood too. I couldn't say no as a child at school. I couldn't say no to my parents. And there was this real fear of disappointing or upsetting somebody or causing a conflict. And it was massive. And it really wasn't sort of doing me any good at all. And I'd also had other traumas recently in my life, and I'd had quite a lot of lower backache and pelvic pain. And Laura suggested that some SHEN might be helpful. And I don't remember how many sessions, probably 4 or 5 or something like that. But the first one was absolutely amazing. I don't know how to describe it other than amazingly peaceful, but I was aware the whole time of things happening inside of my body. It was like a sort of a decluttering kind of sensation, and I honestly felt as if I was being completely rearranged inside. It was the weirdest sensation, but I had experienced huge feelings of sadness, and Laura's amazing. She just kind of puts you in a space or holds a space there for you that you can actually experience those feelings and just allow them to be, really. And something happens. But during this first session, she was working around my stomach and pelvic area, and I just had this huge sadness, and it was like an explosion, and I could see myself in the womb, and this shock of being born, and it was like just screaming no. And that's, I guess, really. Pardon?
Were you a prem baby?
I don't know. I don't know whether I was or not. But with that, all sorts of things changed. Just not immediately right then and there, but over the next few days, all sorts of things, experiences came up, memories came up. The back pain hasn't returned, the pelvic pain hasn't returned. My whole menstrual cycle changed completely and has remained sort of different. And I can say no. I can say no, which is absolutely amazing. My kid's just freaked. So yeah, but it changed so many little things that I didn't even realise were problems in my life. Just lots and lots of little things that just weren't there anymore. I just felt so empowered.
I come from Nera. The abuse took place in suppressed and denied emotion, being British, Scottish. The SHEN has taught me a safe way to acknowledge my blockages and repair the past and to live in the now. And living in the now is it's really cool. Laura, SHEN therapist, very gentle, non-judgmentally supported me to reveal my pain that was locked away since I was a child. I could not reveal it to anyone because I believed that I had to understand, but now I know that I don't. I didn't own who I was allowing pain and trauma from the past impact on the present. And I took, I'm not sure how many sessions, 5
I think it was 4 or 5.
sessions. I experienced grief, loss, guilt, visions of the root of my pain and colours. After I would feel very light for a few days, then I would cry a lot, feeling very cut off, lonely, insecure. Knowing it was a process, then would be relaxed, focused and empowered. It stopped me into reacting for many, many years, and now I find it easier to interact and the judgment is less of a big deal and that it's okay to be me.
Aww.
And people have been in Motueka 9 years and people have noticed a big, big difference in me in the last 6 months. And keep getting empowered every day and just believe in me for the first time, really. That's okay to be me.
That is so cool. Yeah, so what can happen in the SHEN section? So there are some examples there. So this is Jim. He's lying on a cradle. It's like a camp bed strapped onto a treatment table. And it allows your hand to go underneath and on top. So just as before, when you were sending the flow a certain way, it's very powerful because as you're doing that, that flow is going through all the little, it's opening all that ACPR, all that autocontractile pain response is unlocking. And we're drawing out the emotion. And that's why this work is so powerful. You go into an alpha brainwave state where you're not quite awake and you're not quite asleep. Often people will see images of colours. The images can be symbolic, or they might see people they've known or whatever. But it's more of a dawning on them than anything too shocking. And they can often have memories because your body, as you recognise, has memories in it, and so they can surface as well. And it can be things you've forgotten completely, and it can be happy things as well, which is always nice. There's a nice balance. Sometimes you get some really joyful things coming up. Often people make realizations. They realize in particular what it is they've been doing to make things worse. So you actually start to really see people take responsibility for their part in life. So they become less blaming. So gurgles, you'll often hear your tummy go. Some people get embarrassed by that. That's fine because that just means I can access the embarrassment more easily. So twitches and jerks, just as the biofield's straightening out, suddenly your legs can go and just things straightening out. REM, that's the rapid eye movement. You can also get SEM, so that's just one I invented, but it's slow eye movement. Yeah, that can happen as well. Yeah, and changes of the breath as well. So suddenly the breath goes right down, and usually that's the point where something happens. And then the neat thing is you don't quite know what's going on. And what's really neat about that is that that person can keep their information private if they want to. They don't have to tell you their story. They very often want to because it's a very almost an intimate relationship because you're very close to that person. You're witnessing and connected to what they're experiencing, and so often this is where we connect from, and we listen and we give advice, and quite often tell people, well, look on the bright side, like with me with my C-section, well, your baby's okay, and that's true, but it's also true that it was a huge disappointment and very sad. So it's a real validation of your emotions, and so the person just experiences it. This thing that they've been running away from for God knows how long, they just experience it. It's that simple. And the worst point is when it's coming up and they don't want to feel it. And really that's true in life. That's what causes the suffering. It's the resistance that causes the suffering. But in actual fact, when you experience it, it's just relief beyond belief. It's just such a relief. So what can SHEN help with? It's a big long list you can flip through. So depression, which I mentioned before, depression is when all the emotion centres have closed down. So we need a lot of unlocking of the centres. anxiety, which we mentioned before. It's great for that. And confidence as well, really helps with confidence. Fear and phobias and panic attacks. Got somebody who is terrified of horses. She came recently. That was just a by the by. She forgot to mention that she'd nearly been killed by a horse. And when she came to my place, we have horses, so she was a bit terrified. And the other week she was patting the horses. They came over to see her and she was rubbing them and patting them, so she was totally stoked. And that person was also in the tornado up in Auckland, and she was right there, so she came because she was terrified of wind. So that's an example of when a fear or a phobia is being helped with, and then there's other fears and phobias that get helped too. I had somebody who she forgot to, quite often people forget to mention like the most like important and traumatic things, but it was somebody who forgot to mention that she had almost drowned as a child, and she was out jogging and decided to go for a swim in the saltwater baths, and she said she was in saltwater baths and the waves were lapping over the edge of the pool, and she said, I was just loving the feeling. She said, I was jumping over the waves and the sun was setting, it was so beautiful, and she said, I suddenly remembered that I'm terrified of water and I'm terrified of swimming. And she said, and then she realised, oh, I'm not terrified anymore. So that had released and we didn't even know it had released. So that's what's so neat, and that's what I love. Yeah, anger as well can help with anger because we get to the heart behind the anger. So we're not interested in pillow beating. It can be a phase sometimes. There can be a bit of yelling and whatever. I think of it as like a pressure cooker. When the lid goes psh, like that there is a kind of initial release. But the actual work is in the experiencing and just being with the emotion. And in particular getting to the grief or the powerlessness or whatever is behind that. Emotional numbness, that's just when people feel that everything's a bit grey and black and white. And irrational emotions as well, that's more of that overreacting that I mentioned before. So any physio-emotional condition. So there's many conditions we don't really realise have got their roots in emotion, and one of those is, for example, migraine, which I think will come up in a minute. And migraine is grief, and this area here to do with, it's usually shame or something to do with like for example, I think of someone in the UK who she was sent off to boarding school at a young age with no warning. She'd had migraines all her life. I had to go to her house because she was vomiting and all the curtains had to be shut and she couldn't move. And so it's very powerful to give the session during the migraine. And for her it was being sent off to boarding school where suddenly she wasn't the apple of her parents' eye anymore. So there was the grief of and that loss of having the parents about, but also like who am I without my family. Post-traumatic stress disorder, fantastic for that, and shock and emotional trauma obviously, and sexual abuse and rape and attack it's very good for, especially because often people can't find the words to even begin to explain it. They don't know where to start and they don't even want to bother, and often the perpetrator has said to them, don't tell anybody or else. And so that immediately impacts and complicates any kind of counselling, because as soon as they're in a talking situation, they feel terrified that the perpetrator is going to come and get them. Guess what's in their body? Chronic pain, if it's got an emotional cause. Often when there's been an accident, like I mentioned about our little guy Timmy who fell off the stage, I just invented that. If at the point of when the pain occurred, there's been a particular emotion that has surfaced. So embarrassment would be one, like if somebody slips and people see them and they feel silly, then embarrassment will, as that releases, often that will help the physical pain, because that's the contraction that's happened as well as the physical pain. So you've got the two side by side there. And menstrual disorders, PMT or whatever, any chronic fatigue, because it takes a hell of a lot of energy to hold all this stuff in. You know, it's like, I don't know why you do it really, but and so by releasing it, we don't need to hold anywhere near the amount of attention we did. Eating disorders, brilliant. when people have no appetite, it's one session and they've got their appetite back. I mean, obviously anorexia can be a little bit more complex. I haven't worked with anybody with anorexia. I've certainly worked with people who are eating next to nothing. They just haven't been diagnosed as anorexic, and quickly their appetites come back. And there are many SHEN therapists who have worked with anorexics. And even bringing people out of a coma. So if anybody knows of anybody who's in a coma and they're talking about closing off the machine, give me a shout, because it's 2 or 3 sessions and people often come out of a coma.
Can you do the distance? Sorry.
No, you can't do distance SHEN, it's got to be on the body. So why your life changes with SHEN? This is what I was explaining. So your emotion has a birth and a life and a death. I think it's Fritz Perls who said that. And usually we try to avoid rather than experience emotion. So for an emotion to leave us, it needs to complete itself. I think we've got that. As long as you keep trying to avoid how you feel, you'll keep attracting people and situations that will attempt to bring up this emotion and so complete this life cycle.
Oh boy!
That rings a bell, doesn't it?
So you might as well lie on a table and experience it. So when we allow ourselves to experience and so complete this life cycle of an emotion with SHEN, we no longer need those painful life experiences. So everybody knows somebody who has been in a relationship with somebody and they've finally seen the light, they've broken up with them and they've got on with somebody else and exactly the same scenario happens as happened the last time. Yeah, so SHEN's very good for breaking patterns, breaking our cycle, breaking the thing that we're always finding ourselves, even though we said we were never going to do that again, we find ourselves right back where we started. And that's why. So the purpose of SHEN is to enjoy life free from the emotional pain of your past, to allow you to respond to people and situations from present perspective. You mentioned that you felt you were more present. To let go of whatever is holding you back. For the empowering emotions of joy, love and confidence to emerge. They're hidden underneath. And to establish a robust, resilient emotional core upon which to move forward in life. So this is the first SHEN course in New Zealand. That's Richard Pavick, who's the founder. That was me assisting. And these are all the people. Oh, Saranya here, she's the instructor now. She was a SHEN therapist at that time. And this is Barbara, who's now a SHEN therapist. She's done the full internship program. And Anna there in Christchurch, she's almost completed her internship program. At the moment, there's Saranya is a certified SHEN therapist, and there's Barbara, she's the certified SHEN therapist, and there's myself in the front. That's it. In the whole of New Zealand. I've come from Scotland, so it's been there for over 20 years. It's quite well known there, and in America, it's quite well known. You can go on the web and see all the various different countries that have got SHEN, Norway, and SHEN is actually at the same stage in New Zealand as it was at 20 years ago when I first came across it in Scotland. And what happened was I heard of it from 3 different sources in the space of a week. And one person said, oh, SHEN, that's that thing to do with symbols in the body. And I thought, oh, that sounds interesting. And then somebody else said, oh, I heard of that SHEN thing. Somebody was having a counselling session and the person put their hands on the spine and they felt like water was like falling down their spine, like a waterfall. It's just, you can get all sorts of body sensations. And then the third person said, oh, I know someone who's done that SHEN course. It was someone I happen to know. And she had done some SHEN training and I think she's helping to organise the courses. So I got home, picked the phone up and said, what's this SHEN thing about? Actually, don't bother answering my question. I want to train in it. When's the next course? And she said, oh, I've just put the phone down to somebody who's just cancelled for this weekend. And you can have the slot. And so I went along that Saturday and it absolutely changed my life completely. Just absolutely amazing. I'd had real problems with my throat for years from the age of being a child, about 8 or 9. And I was in my 20s at this point, and after I'd gone through a whole release, I went, oh my God, this is what it feels like to not have a sore throat. I didn't know what it was like to not have a sore throat, and I've never had one since, apart from the odd cold here and then. And I think that's what's so good is this is it's like permanent relief. It's not just like, oh God, here it is back again kind of thing. And so, I have clients who used to have migraine They used to have PMT and they just don't have it anymore, you know, and that's really amazing. So it's an incredible journey to do a workshop, and we have just started. We're in the process of bringing it down to the South Island. So the first stage is we have a SHEN A coming up here, which is through in Tasman, where we are. So you learn the basic hand positions so that you'll give and you'll receive 10 SHEN sessions. And I'll be there assisting, and Saranya will be teaching. You can find it all on the website. Prerequisite for this course is to have at least one SHEN session with myself. My rate's at $80 an hour. That's because we just need you to have an experience before you decide to come on the course. And then the next stage is SHEN B, which will be in September. And that's 4 days, is that? 8th, 9th, 10th, 11th, yeah, that's a 4-day course. And includes the same things, and you get some more charts to add on, and then you'll learn some more advanced hand positions. So you get about, between the two, you get about 20 SHEN sessions. You do that twice because what we find is that you're going through so much of your own clearing out that people can't always take in the mental stuff as well. So you actually repeat it, so you clear out some more, and you can absorb what's going on, so you're really ready for the next
Do you
thing.
mean you do A and B and then you do A
And B again,
twice?
yes, that's right. This one is run by the founder. He's coming over from America to teach it, and that's the beginning of your internship program training, because this is a very thorough therapy, and so we want to make sure that people are clear on themselves as they're doing the SHEN. So a lot of the training is receiving SHEN and learning all about what's going on in the body. You can take it as far as you want. You see, you can just do a SHEN A just for the benefit of your own personal empowerment and clearing out your emotions. I mean, you can do that, but you can't then set yourself up as a SHEN therapist. And so what I really like is there's always another thing you can do. So, you know, like when I did my first SHEN A, I put my name down for SHEN B because I benefited so much from SHEN A. And this wasn't available when I first did my training. But I went up to Auckland and did this the last time. And I thought, oh my God, these people are so lucky, you're getting the creme de la creme, you know. It's really been refined and honed, and it's really covering all bases now. And I found that very beneficial. A and B is the first step, and then you always have to do a full internship program. But clinical skills is the new part. The internship comes after the clinical skills, and that's when you go on to doing your case studies, and you do 200 hours of case studies. And there's details on the piece of paper that I've got there. But you don't have to make that decision straight away, because the thing is, you can take your time. You don't have to do everything all at once. I mean, I found that I would do, you know, I'd do my SHEN A and I'd do my SHEN B, and then I'd wait a little bit, and then I might do another SHEN A at another point. The clinical skills seminar is a bit of an opportunity because Richard doesn't come to New Zealand that often. So for people who haven't managed to repeat A and B, because I'm not sure that there's going to be another one before he comes, apart from this one. So we'll probably make an allowance that it's done at a later stage or something like that if people want to do the full internship program. What you can do is, once you're on the internship program, when your mentor is satisfied that you're reaching a certain competence with your SHEN sessions, you can start to charge part of the fee. So you can do like half price and then gradually work it up as your SHEN improves. But we want to keep the standard high, and because we're dealing with people's emotions, and because the experience is personal, there's just, you know, you're there with people going through what they're going through, it can bring up your stuff. That's why, you know, the training is so thorough. Because otherwise somebody might have something come up and you might be terrified.
You've got your own crap coming on.
Exactly, you've got it. And so then as you're terrified, you're not going to be able to help them through, because you can't take anybody where you're not willing to go yourself. And the neat thing is, you see, it's been a bit tricky for me because I haven't been able to get SHEN for quite some time because I've been the only SHEN therapist in the South Island, and so I've had to experience life without being able to get SHEN. And I don't know how you do it.
Can you do it to yourself?
You can do it a little bit to yourself, but it's never quite, you know, it's never quite the same. It's tricky up
It
here.
doesn't work the same.
No.
Your own energy. It doesn't matter what modality, it doesn't matter if it's acupuncture, it doesn't matter what it is.
Yeah.
Your recycled personal energy never interacts the same way as
Not as strong.
an outside energy.
Yeah.
Laura, do you- sorry,
Yes,
I was just going to ask you, do you ever, in a session with somebody, if like an emotion is coming up, do you ever find that person, because it's so painful or so deep, they just fight it back down again? Do they just, are there ever situations, like I was thinking in particular, you know, sexual abuse, rape, that kind of thing, that it would be, I would imagine, totally terrifying to get that feeling start to come up, and you're lying on the table, presumably in a quiet kind of a room. I can imagine perhaps somebody might feel that they want to go, no way, I'm not going there.
What I
I'm
do is I
fighting
say
you.
to people, if you want me to stop, say stop the SHEN.
Yeah.
So if they want to say stop, that's
Yeah.
fine. But if they
Yeah.
want me to stop the SHEN, they need to say stop the SHEN, and that's my sign. I'll take my hands off them there and then, and
Yeah.
it will all stop. But I've never had anybody say that, even though I've invited people to say that.
Do you find that the emotions that come up are kind of like, I just think about the modality that I do, sometimes it just comes up in a watered degree, but they don't realise how much that it's actually gone until like the woman with the swimming. So it's not that they go, oh my god, and they do all their stuff on the table. It's like that after they go, oh my goodness, I did this and I used to be frightened. Is that because that's kind of the modality I use, that's kind of that sort of feeling that you don't always get that intenseness, but it just melts away. Is it?
Yeah, because the gauge is how they are in their life, you know. You know, somebody can just lie on the SHEN table and nothing really seems to happen, and then they go home, they might have some really emotive dreams.
Yeah.
They come back and tell you, but then it's like they're releasing the emotion, and I was thinking, oh, those are the lucky ones. You know, it's like they're anesthetized with their emotion, but then, you know, the gauge is how are you in your life, you know, and it's things like, you know what, I was with my parents and I just told them to get lost for the first time ever, you know, and I did, or another one is when people find themselves just dealing with something in a whole new way without actually saying, I'm going to deal with this a whole new way, I'm not going to do that anymore, I'm going to do it this way, or they just, that's right, and that's where you're really seeing the SHEN at work.
Well, that's when they come back to you and go, oh yeah, I used to be this because I almost drowned, and they need children.
Yeah,
But
that's
now
right.
it's not like that anymore.
Yeah, exactly.
They might not even always attribute it
Yeah.
to the treatment, which
Yeah.
is really interesting
Yeah.
because you as a practitioner, you know very well that chances are without that treatment, that probably wouldn't have happened.
Yeah.
But they don't always attribute it to
No,
it.
that's right.
It's
Yeah,
very
that's frustrating, isn't it?
Well, you just
You can bet $1 if they get angry. You can bet $1 if they get angry, they'll attribute it to But yeah, I mean, certainly people don't always make that connection, and it doesn't really matter if the change has happened. But I always want to know of any changes. So what happens is the session itself is in silence, but before, about 5 or 10 minutes beforehand, I check in, how have you been, what's been happening, any physical pain I need to know about, have you had any dreams lately, and that gives me an indication of where we need to work. And often within that check-in they'll say, God, I've been feeling so much better, or I'm not constipated anymore, or whatever, and then I'll pry to find out, well, what else, you know, okay, we've done that, what's next? And so we're, you know, always looking for that door that's open. But I always do SHEN as a series, so I tend not to give one-off SHEN sessions, apart from like there it's a prerequisite for the SHEN training course. What I always do is I do a full case study when I first meet someone, and I want to know what it is they want from this. I think that's really important. Sometimes we forget, you know, where are we actually heading? Where's this ship heading? We can go around in circles otherwise.
Do they always know?
No, sometimes
No,
they're clueless.
that's-
Sometimes they're shocked at being asked that. They've been in therapy and counselling for God knows how long. But they've never actually thought, what do I actually want? Oh,
Is there any ideal time?
yeah. No less than a week between sessions. So I tend to see people for 6 to 10 sessions. And what happens is as the emotion arises, if they're going through a bit of a difficult time, I'll say to them, how about you come 2 days' time or even tomorrow? You can actually see people every day.